human Starship dream mocked by an alien until his gold card changed everything. Eric Matthews hadn't planned on starting a war that day. All he wanted was a new Starship. Yet, the moment he walked into Astral Elegance, the galaxy's most exclusive Starship dealership, he knew things were about to spiral into something much bigger. The dealership's towering walls of glass and polished titanium gleamed under the bright artificial sun of Corollia, a planet known for its wealth and its disdain for anything remotely human. Eric's boots clicked against the obsidian floor as he made his way through the showroom, a space designed to make anyone feel insignificant. Sleek starships floated in the air, their gleaming hulls catching the light in mesmerizing displays. Eric had seen ships like these before, but this time he wasn't just here as a curious observer. He was here to buy. Dressed in his simple black t-shirt and worn jeans, Eric didn't look like the kind of man who would step foot in such an extravagant place. The glances from the sales associates confirmed that. Their eyes lingered on him with a mix of skepticism and pity, as if he were a fly that had accidentally landed in their pristine web. Then she appeared. Rita Navari, the dealership's top saleswoman, a striking figure with skin as blue as a starless sky and hair like spun silver. She moved with the elegance of someone who had spent her life surrounded by wealth and power. But there was an edge to her beauty, a cruel sharpness in the way her deep sapphire eyes scanned Eric from head to toe, sizing him up as though she already knew his worth, or lack thereof. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice smooth but laced with an unmistakable trace of superiority. Eric didn't flinch. "I'm looking for a new ship," he said plainly, meeting her gaze without much as a twitch of hesitation. She raised an eyebrow, the corner of her lips curling into a mock smile. She took a step closer, her heels clicking against the floor with an almost predatory rhythm. "A new ship? For you? This isn't really the place for people like you," she said, her words coated with disdain. Eric felt a familiar burn in his chest, but he kept his composure. He had experienced this kind of treatment countless times before. The galaxy's elite, whether humans or aliens, always underestimated him. But they never understood that Eric Matthews wasn't just any human. He wasn't just a man looking for a starship. He was the founder of Terran Quantum Solutions, a company that had revolutionized interstellar travel, and he had worked for every credit he'd earned. He leaned in slightly, his eyes locked with hers, a steady calm in his voice. "I'm interested in the Phoenix model, the Celestial class." Rita's expression faltered for a brief second before she recovered, a cruel laugh escaping her lips. "The Phoenix? Our top-tier model? The base price is 15 million credits. That's quite a sum, even for someone of your stature." Eric smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes, but spoke volumes. "I'll still take a look at it," he said, ignoring the jab. Rita couldn't hide her surprise, and as she led him toward the back of the showroom, the other sales associates whispered behind their hands. Rita wasn't the only one who had misjudged him. When they reached the Phoenix Celestial, Eric's gaze softened in genuine admiration. The ship was a work of art, its hull shimmering like liquid silver, its aerodynamic lines so graceful that it almost looked as though it was floating even when stationary. This wasn't just a starship, it was a statement. "The Phoenix Celestial," Rita announced, her voice tinged with a touch of pride. "Quantum-enhanced engines, capable of speeds your human ships could never dream of. Adaptive shield technology, the finest luxury materials sourced from the most elite planets in the sector." Eric walked around the ship, genuinely impressed by the design. "How much for the deluxe package?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. Rita's smile returned, but it was a cold one. 22 million credits, a price most beings couldn't afford. But perhaps you'd like to take a look at some more affordable models. She glanced pointedly at the lower-end ships displayed nearby. Eric met her gaze with unwavering confidence. "I'll take the deluxe package," he said, his voice calm. Then, as an afterthought, he added, "And I'd like to discuss some custom modifications." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single card. Not just any card, but a gold business credit card, the kind issued only to the wealthiest of the wealthy, those with assets exceeding 10 billion credits. The emblem of the Galactic Reserve Bank gleamed in the light. Rita's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, as if she were struggling to find the right words. That's impossible," she stammered, her voice losing all its earlier sharpness. Eric simply held the card out to her, watching her face as the color drained from it. The other sales associates in the showroom fell silent, eyes glued to the shiny gold card. "I'll take the deluxe package," Eric repeated quietly, "and I'd like to discuss those custom modifications." The shift in the room was palpable. The once mocking laughter was replaced by an awkward stillness, and Rita, now visibly flustered, seemed to regain her composure. "Of course, Mr. Matthews," she said, her voice shaky but trying to maintain professionalism. "Please follow me to my office, and we can discuss your specifications." As they walked, the murmurs of the other associates followed them, the whispers now full of recognition. Eric Matthews, the human billionaire, the one who had revolutionized quantum travel and was now standing in the midst of the galaxy's wealthiest elite, ordering a Starship like it was a cup of coffee. Eric didn't care about their reactions. He was used to being underestimated. He had worked his entire life to get to this point, and now the galaxy would see what humans were capable of. When he reached her office, Rita hesitated, then looked at him with something that was now more respect than contempt. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Matthews," she said, her voice softer. "Had I known who you were, I would have treated you differently." Eric leaned back in the plush chair, his eyes locked on hers. "That's precisely why I don't advertise who I am," he said calmly. "Now, let's talk business." What he didn't say was that this wasn't just about buying a ship. It was about sending a message. Humans had always been underestimated, and Eric was determined to change that, one deal at a time. What had started as a simple purchase would soon lead to something far more dangerous, and Rita, unwittingly, had become part of a much larger game. And the war? It had only just begun. The hidden game. Eric Matthews had expected the usual sales pitch when he walked into Astral Elegance. He had expected Rita to show him the ship's features and push the luxury, push the price. But what he hadn't expected was to find himself caught in a game far more dangerous than he had imagined. As Rita led him through the sleek corridors of the dealership's private office wing, Eric could feel the shift in the air. The way she walked, now at ease and almost apologetic, was worlds apart from the condescending woman he had encountered earlier. But there was an edge to her beauty, a guarded secret in the way her deep sapphire eyes scanned Eric from head to toe, sizing him up as though she already knew his worth, or lack thereof. "Please make yourself comfortable, Mr. Matthews," she said, the professional mask firmly back in place. "I'll have the modifications for your Phoenix ready in a few moments. You wanted custom interiors, yes?" Eric nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. He had learned to read people, and something wasn't adding up. Rita had shifted from disdain to respect in the blink of an eye, but there was an undercurrent beneath her words that he couldn't ignore. He'd been in enough high-stakes negotiations to recognize when something was being hidden. Rita tapped a few commands on her holo display, the screen flickering to life. She began detailing the modifications, custom leather from Earth, advanced Terran quantum navigation systems, and more. But Eric wasn't listening. His mind was still focused on the one thing that had bothered him from the moment he stepped into the showroom, the look on her face when she first saw his gold credit card. It wasn't just shock, it was recognition. Something about that card had made her freeze, and Eric wasn't one to miss a clue. "Rita," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp, "there's something else we need to talk about." She paused mid-sentence, her fingers hovering over the display, her expression flickering for a brief second, but it was enough. Eric had caught it. Her voice remained steady, though her tone now tinged with a slight tremor in her voice.
"Of course, Mr. Matthews. What else can I help you with?" He leaned forward, folding his arms on the desk, his gaze not leaving hers. "Your relationship with Valerian Nix. You said he was your former business partner. Care to tell me more about that?" For the first time, Rita's professional demeanor slipped. The coldness in her expression softened, replaced with a fleeting vulnerability. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, and for a moment it seemed like she might say something, but then the walls came up again, fast and high. "I didn't think you'd be interested in my personal history," she replied, her tone carefully neutral, but the slight tremor in her voice didn't escape Eric. "I'm not here to dig into your past," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "But I need to know if there's something I should be worried about. If I'm going to do business with you, I need to know."
The freighter's docking bay opened, its massive metal doors creaking and groaning under the strain as the Phoenix glided effortlessly into the spacious area. Eric slowed the ship's approach, making sure everything went as smoothly as possible. There was no room for error now. Once the Phoenix touched down, he felt a brief moment of stillness, but it was quickly broken by the subtle hum of the ship's auxiliary systems. The Phoenix wasn't just a luxury ship, it was a masterpiece of technology. And in the heart of the vessel, hidden beneath layers of security, lay the real weapon, a sophisticated virus designed to infiltrate and disable anything it came into contact with. It wasn't just about a quantum navigation algorithm, it was about destroying Valerian's network before he could ever use it. Eric moved quickly, his hands working with precision. He activated the virus, sending it through the freighter's communications system, its code silently infiltrating the enemy ship's central hub. Within seconds, the freighter's internal systems began to buckle under the strain. Lights flickered, the hum of the engines faltered, the atmosphere inside the ship shifted, a dull pressure building as the virus silently sabotaged its every function. The timing was perfect. As the Phoenix's engines powered down, Eric felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was the moment of truth. He had set the trap, and now it was about to spring. "Justin, I need full surveillance on the freighter's systems," Eric ordered, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. "We've got one shot at this. I need to know exactly what's happening." Seconds passed, but Eric knew Justin was already tracking the freighter's compromised systems. "They're scrambling, Eric. The freighter's AI is trying to reinitialize its defenses, but it's too late. They're blind. The virus is fully active." Eric allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction before he made the call. "Let's go," he said, as the emergency hatch on the Phoenix opened with a hiss. He stepped out, his boots making soft sounds on the cold metal of the freighter's bay. His mind was laser-focused. Valerian and his men thought they had the upper hand, but this was the moment they would realize they were already in the trap. As Eric moved deeper into the freighter, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly in the distance. He knew Valerian's men would be alerted by now. They'd likely try to counterattack, but they would be too disorganized, too slow. The virus had already done its work, disrupting their systems, shutting down critical infrastructure, and leaving the crew vulnerable. Eric had trained for this, anticipating every move, every contingency. He wasn't about to let Valerian escape again. "Rita," Eric said quietly as he moved through the darkened halls of the freighter, "stay close, we're almost there." He didn't need to explain himself. Rita knew what was at stake. The faint tremor in her voice during the earlier transmission had been enough to reveal the truth. Valerian's influence ran deeper than just business. This wasn't just about taking down an enemy. This was personal. Ahead, Eric saw a figure in the shadows. It was Valerian's security chief, a hulking alien with dark markings across his face. The man moved swiftly, a blaster raised, his eyes scanning for any signs of threat. Without hesitation, Eric reached for the concealed weapon at his side, a sleek energy pistol that had been designed for stealth. With practiced precision, he took aim and fired, the blast knocking the security chief to the ground before he had a chance to react. The silence that followed was deafening.
Eric stepped over the fallen body, moving closer to his destination. The freighter's central control room was just ahead, where Valerian would undoubtedly be overseeing his failed escape plan. Eric's pulse quickened, but his steps remained steady. He had played this game, and now it was time to finish it. The door to the control room hissed open, revealing Valerian himself, standing with his back to the entrance, staring out into space. He was still confident, as though he hadn't just lost control of his own ship. "Valerian," Eric said, his voice cold. The man turned slowly, his expression a mix of surprise and fury. "Matthews, I should have known you'd find me." Eric stepped into the room, his pistol trained on Valerian. "This ends now." But Valerian wasn't defeated yet. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a hidden console, and the room around them seemed to pulse with new energy. Eric's eyes widened as the freighter's emergency systems began to come online again, the force field around them humming to life. "You've learned something from me, Eric," Valerian said with a smirk. "You can't trap a man who has nothing left to lose." Eric didn't flinch. He knew Valerian was trying to play a game of intimidation, but the trap had already been set. The virus, the Phoenix, it was all leading to this moment. "You should have learned one more thing," Eric said, his voice unwavering. "Never underestimate a human who's been pushed too far." With a single command, the virus activated again, flooding through the freighter's systems like a wave of destruction. The shields failed, the weapons went offline. Valerian's smug grin faltered as he realized the trap was closing in. Eric stepped forward, his grip tightening on the gun, ready to take the final shot. But just as he reached Valerian, Rita's voice rang out. "Eric, wait!" Everything stopped. The air felt thick with tension as Eric turned to face her, his weapon still aimed at Valerian. "Don't finish it like this," Rita said, her voice shaking but steady. "He's already lost." Eric hesitated. The choice was his. The trap was set. Now he had to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. The war had reached its peak, and Eric knew the final move would define it all. The final confrontation. The silence in the control room felt suffocating as Eric Matthews stood with the barrel of his weapon trained on Valerian. The freighter's systems were in chaos, but the most significant disturbance was the sudden tension between him and Rita. Her voice had stopped him from delivering the final blow to Valerian, and in that moment, Eric realized the true cost of his decision. "Rita," Eric said, quieter now, "you know what he's done. He tried to destroy everything I've worked for. He used you, used your family. This is your chance to finally make him pay." Rita's gaze met his, and for the first time, Eric saw something other than the professional facade she had maintained. It was vulnerability, uncertainty, perhaps even regret. Her hand hovered nervously near her side, and she took a small step towards him, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know what he's done," she replied, her eyes not leaving Valerian's figure. "But revenge, it won't bring back what he took from me. It won't change the past. Killing him now, it just makes us like him." Valerian's eyes flickered between them, his lips curling into a sneer. "How touching!" he mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The human and the Corollian suddenly finding common ground. How noble!" He spat the word with disdain. Eric's grip tightened on the weapon, his pulse quickening. He had always been a man of action, someone who used his mind to solve problems, but right now his instincts were urging him to end this, end him. But something in Rita's words held him back, forcing him to confront a choice he hadn't anticipated. The room hummed with the flicker of failing lights as the virus continued its silent sabotage. The freighter was essentially defenseless now, its internal systems crippled beyond repair. It wouldn't be long before the authorities arrived, but for now, it was just the three of them in the belly of the ship, Valerian, Rita, and Eric. For a long moment, neither spoke. Eric's mind raced, weighing the decision before him. He knew that killing Valerian wouldn't solve everything. It would only feed the cycle of hatred and revenge. Yet there was a part of him that wanted to see Valerian pay for everything he'd done, for everything he'd taken. Valerian, sensing the hesitation in the room, let out a low, mocking laugh. "You think you've won, don't you?" he mocked with a mocking laugh. "You've got me cornered, but trust me, Matthews, this isn't over. I've got friends, connections you can't even begin to understand. You can take me down now, but someone else will rise in my place. You'll never be free." Eric stepped closer, his eyes cold. "You're right about one thing, Valerian. This isn't over, but your game is done." He turned his gaze to Rita, his voice softer. "But that's not the answer anymore, is it?" Rita slowly nodded, her expression conflicted but resolute. "It's not about winning or losing," she said, taking a step forward. "It's about moving on. We're not the same people anymore. We can't let the past decide our future." Eric felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he finally lowered his weapon, the tension in the air dissipating, though not entirely. "Then let's make sure he never hurts anyone again," he said, his voice resolute, but tempered by the weight of their shared decision. With a sharp gesture, Eric activated the freighter's internal security systems, locking down all access points and alerting the authorities to Valerian's criminal activities. He would face justice, but it would come at the hands of the law, not at the hands of vengeance. Valerian snarled in frustration, but there was nothing he could do now. The game was